What's up, Black Love fam and first time fam? Welcome to another edition of Man to Man, a part of the Black Love Podcast Network. I'm David Wazicki, General Manager of Black Love, and today I am very fortunate to have the chance to talk to someone I've been following for a while and was very fortunate enough to run into his wife at a Whole Foods locally out here in LA. We'll get to that in a second, but I do want to give you some background. He is the author of the USA Today national bestseller, Eat Smarter, the international bestseller, Sleep Smarter. He's also the creator of the Model Health Show, featured as the #1 health podcast in the US with millions of downloads per year, probably per month after this one. He's also the co-founder of Advanced Integrative Health Alliance, and I'm sure we'll dive into all of that. But for now, let's get to the man, the myth, the living legend, Shawn Stevenson.
Thank you so much, man. It's a really an honor to be here. And listen, that story with you intersected with my wife, as I was sharing with you, it's a magical moment, great synchronicity, and I'm just honored to be here with you.
Yeah, likewise. Look, I'm a big fan of synchronicity. That's probably another conversation to have, whether online or offline. But yeah, I think it was beautiful how it came together with that, again, chance fortuitous meeting. And here we are. So I want to jump in. And I usually love, because this is called Man to Man, and it's, wellness from a male perspective. I like to jump in with an icebreaker that is near and dear to me, and it's something that's kind of changing right now in our landscape, and that's essentially masculinity. What does that mean to you?
Wow. Yeah, that term in and of itself, just like everything, is always evolving. You know, I was just walking with my youngest son. He's 9 years old, and he was like, "Dad, there is no such thing as left or right." And then I was like, okay, where is this going? Then he made me stop walking. He put his hand gently on my torso. He's like, "Dad, check this out." So he showed his left and right. Then he turned around the other way and said, "Now this is left and right. It's always different. It doesn't exist." And I said that it's all about perspective, right? It's not that it doesn't exist. It can be both. It can not exist at all, or it can be ever existent. And it just depends on your perspective and where you are right now, because that left and right is going to change. So a term like masculinity, it is so complex and also so simple, but it's also ever evolving. Today, I really feel that masculinity, some of those qualities that we can kind of pinpoint within that framework of what masculinity is. Again, these are all social constructs too. You know, we're trying to label a certain set of qualities, would be strength, would be persistence and endurance, would be in both. And also I've got to say the caveat that both women and men carry what we would consider masculine traits and feminine traits.
Thank you.
You know, so we've got to make that clear as well. But also, I subscribe right now. I really feel that there's a part of it that's kind of a warrior spirit, you know, to be able, and what that means is it's not necessarily you're trying to fight against something or to take somebody's life or anything like that, but the willingness to stand for something, the willingness to fight, even if it's for other people. Like for me, I'm fighting for humanity, you know, so I'm not fighting against other people per se. I might be fighting for somebody who doesn't even care that I'm fighting for them. You know, it's just that idea, that modality, that framework that I'm fighting for humanity. I think another thing would be, and this is for me personally right now, within that warrior spirit and masculinity, is patience. You know, so knowing when to strike, knowing when to leverage that aggression, and also maintaining that homeostasis of peace. You know, that's really fit into the masculinity framework for me as well. So it's a big topic, but I hope that I colored that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. No wrong answers. I've yet to hear the same answer twice. So I appreciate that. For me, one thing you pointed out was that both men and women carry that masculinity. For me, I like to say in all of us, there's a masculine energy, there's a feminine energy, and depending on what you need to approach, whether it is, like you're saying, I mean, you're doing it for humanity, which is huge. And we're going to dig into that in a second, what that fight is. And I love it. And I'm there for you. I'm one of those soldiers on a battlefield supporting it. So definitely want to dig into that in a hot second. But I think it's all in the approach. And to your point, it is an evolution. It is ongoing. And I think when both men, women, however you want to label yourself, start realizing those energies that you can tap into and the power that lies within each of those, that's where the secret sauce is.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. This big fight for humanity. So you started, I think before we go into the fight that you're fighting present day, I think we should kind of go back into how this fight began, because I didn't even know this existed. And furthermore, I didn't know this existed for somebody that was in their 20s, that you were diagnosed, I believe at the age of 20, with degenerative disc disease. And I feel like that may be a jumping off point here. I'll let you, of course, tell your own story, but I think that's the jumping off point to get on this journey towards this fight for humanity and wellness and well-being for all of us.
Yeah, you just said it. It's a big thing for me to even say something like that. I've never said that before, but it's in my psyche about me fighting for humanity. But this is coming from a place that for the majority of my life, when I was, younger, prior to that age of 20, when all of this stuff started to break down, I was the opposite. I was very selfish. I was very self-centered. Let me put it like that. And I didn't want to be that way. I mean, I loved my family. I wanted to protect my little brother, my little sister. I love and honor my grandmother and my grandfather. But I come from a very volatile environment. And I just did this yesterday. I just thought about it. Like the majority of my years on planet Earth, I lived in Ferguson, Missouri / Ferguson, Florissant. We moved to the good part of Ferguson. Yeah. So just being there front and center for, just all the things that come along with that. I got to witness things firsthand about the reality of living in these conditions. But what's not talked about is how many wonderful people are there. But we're just inundated with this, really, it's oppression. We don't know what health looks like. There wasn't a damn Whole Foods by me. Here in LA now, like you could literally throw a rock and hit a Whole Foods. There was one Whole Foods in all of St. Louis, period. But it damn sure wasn't close to me. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what I didn't know what that meant. There was no gyms in my area. There was no yoga studio. I was in college at the time. I went to the University of Missouri, St. Louis, which wasn't too far from Ferguson. But it just, even the campus, it didn't look like it belonged in the neighborhood. It's just like it just didn't fit in until you cross the street and things got nicer, and it's just like this in most, places across the country. The haves and have nots are so close to each other. And for me, it's really all about exposure. So the reason that I was so self-centered, it was a protective mechanism. Really, I was in situations where I could have lost my life so many times. It's just, there's some grace there for me to be here today. And also, my mother being in the environment that I was in, she wanted me to be tough, and so at the age of 4, I'm talking my earliest memories is, the little kid next door. We kept getting little kid scuffles. I was 4. He was like 6 years old. Alfonso, shout out to Alfonso if you're listening. Alfonso. And we kept getting into it, but my mother and his caretaker, I don't remember who the two people were that he had with him. Might have been his mother and aunt or uncle or something. But there were 2 other adults that were with, quote, his side, and they made us fight each other. And wow. I'm just a baby. I'm a 4-year-old baby, man, and within 5 seconds of this commence, I remember very clearly feeling like, I don't want to do this. Why is she making me do this? And within 5 seconds of that fight, he pushed me into the corner of a brick wall. I still have this huge scar on the back of my head to this day, split my head open. Damn. And that was my first introduction to violence, in a way outside that I'm participating in, because I saw the violence within my household. family members
Sure.
fighting,
Sure.
that whole thing. And so, long story long, getting to that place where now I'm taking that teaching. My mother, and the thing is, you would hear something like that, like that's a horrible mother. That's a horrible example of a parent. But in her own way, she was trying to prepare me for the world that can be very tough, especially in the environment that we're in. So,
Sure.
but from that, now I'm using violence as a tool, as an outlet, as a protective mechanism as well. So even though I've got a 3.8 GPA, I'm on student advisory, I'm a teenage health consultant, this special program. I was the first time this project called Inroads with St. Louis University was working with my high school for college credit for students. I was in the first year of students to ever be able to do that. I had all these things going for me, but I ended up getting into a fight and got kicked out my entire junior year of high school. And then you would think I'd get my act together. So I graduated in 3 years of high school, fortunately, go to college. I get kicked out of college for fighting. Who does that? Because that was my tool. I was always looking for a problem, and I was just very self-centered because I just saw these threats everywhere that I go, and you will find what you're looking for. Now, where this all transitions, and here's the cherry on top of the story. I went from being so self-centered to being so focused on others and service. Like even this morning, the first thing that I do when I wake up, and I'm aware that I'm aware, as I ask, how can I serve today? That's the first thing that I ask. Now, it's been my dominant question for the past 15 years. And it's because everything really from the surface, superficially, everything was taken from me. The one thing that I did have was my health. Let me be clear, not health, fitness. There's a difference. I was a very fit person, and I felt very capable. In high school, I ran a 4.5 40 when I was 15 years old, prior to me getting kicked out of school. And so like all my prospects of, collegiate athletes, right. While I was there, I was doing my thing. But I use that as like, that's my one identity that I have is I'm capable. I could fight if it comes down to it. I could fight. I could survive. These are the things that my mother taught me. But now that's taken away and I feel like a complete victim. My identity is shattered. I have advanced arthritis of my spine when I'm just a kid. I'm 20 years old. And the physician is telling me that this is incurable. There's nothing you can do about this. I asked him, does this have anything to do with what I'm eating? Because I did have a nutritional science class at that point, but I thought I had to do with fitness. So maybe that's where the question came from. I don't know. But he looked me dead in my eyes and he said that this has nothing to do with what you're eating. But then he proceeded to write me a prescription to eat some pills. Right? This has nothing to do with what you're putting in your mouth, but go ahead and put these pills in your mouth. And he was writing my future by telling me that this is incurable and I'm going to be in pain for the rest of my life. And so here's the end of the story is, 2 years went by, devastating, absolute like crushing pain every day. I can't sleep at night. Every hour or so I'm waking up, pain is waking me up. I'm on all these medications. I'm gaining a lot of weight at this point. My fitness was gone, so now not only am I, in pain, but now I'm gaining a lot of additional weight, which is making me even more sedentary, making me feel even worse. And I stopped really identifying, not even recognizing who I was seeing in the mirror. But all of that changed, and we can dig into this more. After 2 years of suffering and outsourcing my belief about what's possible for me to other people, because I saw all these other physicians looking for somebody to help me. And that was my dominant question at the time. Why won't somebody help me? Why me? Why did this happen to me? And your mind is always going to find the answer to those questions. So after I saw the last physician, my question changed. And I finally asked after 2 years, what can I do to get better? What can I do personally to feel better? What can I do to get healthy? And it changed my life because the solutions that were always there, they were always present, but I wasn't tuned into them because I was so focused on how bad things were.
Right. Crazy. It's, I've heard this time and time again, especially more recently in the folks I like to follow, associate myself with, just kind of have that mindset, is taking this accountability, this self-accountability. And at first it may sound harsh because it's as if, if you're in this bad situation, it's all your fault. You did that. So that's why you're there. And Conversely, if you want to get out of it, it's your fault. You are there. So it is a hard pill to swallow. This is something I'm still trying to fully come to terms with, that everything that happens, it starts here. Like, it's me looking in the mirror in the morning. It's like, yeah, if you have those issues, it's your fault, you know? But conversely, it's, you know, what you're saying. And I think, now that you know, at that point, so you said, okay, let me look, how can I help me? How can I get better myself? So I'm sure this is where things began. From that point on, I mean, what did it take for you first to overcome that degenerative disc disease? Like, what did you start taking, or was there a person? Was there a book? Was there some, I don't know, just divine spark that was like, aha, this is it. This is the thing. How did that matriculate into I am healed?
So as I mentioned, the human brain is so fascinating. It's a big part of my research, and I've got some of the most incredible neuroscientists in the world who are my friends and colleagues. And even on my latest book, Eat Smarter, probably the foremost neuroscientist in the world, Dr. Daniel Amen, who's got the greatest catalog of brain imaging scans, SPECT scans in the world. He did the front cover quote for the book. So when I'm saying this stuff, this isn't just hearsay. It's not because it sounds good. The human brain really is a servo mechanism in many ways. There's certain parts of the brain that are really driven by what you focus on. And so there's an instinctive reflex that the brain does. It's called instinctive elaboration. And when you pose a question to your brain, which you can be conscious or unconscious of this, that's the key. That question that you're asking, your brain is hardwired. We are designed to find the answer to that question. This is why, like, even with entertainment, this is how they get you. You know, you got to see what happens next. It's the open loop, because you're questioning, you're asking a question. What happened? What happened to Sheila? Where is this going? You know, how did Ghost, is he going to get out of jail? Whatever it is, you know. And so, but we can use the psychology for ourselves. We can, in essence, kind of take control of our own mind, our own thinking, where oftentimes we've outsourced it. And so when I'm asking why me, why did this happen to me, and why won't somebody help me, I'm looking in my environment to affirm and answer these questions, why my life is so bad. Because what I'm trying to point to, the fact of the solutions were there all along, which is within a week of me answering that question. Well, first of all, there's a new motivation. Now I'm going to the low-hanging fruit. I'm a big fan of low-hanging fruit. Like, for me, being an athlete, prior to all of this happening, I went to some of those things, which I couldn't really walk well. I was in so much pain, but I just went and did what I can. I went to the university gym, just got on the stationary bike, pedaling a little bit. It was hard. And I just did that for a few days. And I walked a little bit more for a few days. Then I started to walk a little bit more. So then I started to pick up a couple of weights. So I'm just doing what I can do, right? And that was happening. So I'm releasing endorphins. You know, my biochemistry is changing. But for whatever reason, there's somebody I've been quote talking to these past couple of years. Somebody that I knew from a previous college that I went to, the one I got kicked out of. She had went on and she became a chiropractor, and she just all seemed very weird to me, right? But I was hanging out with her a lot. But once I changed my question, now within a week of me asking, how can I get better? How can I get healthy? She takes me to Wild Oats, which has since been bought up by Whole Foods. And so there was a Whole Foods in St. Louis, one Whole Foods and one Wild Oats. And so we went to Wild Oats, and it was just like, I didn't know that this existed. There were books there that were detailing degenerative disc disease and some of the causative factors. I was like, I didn't know that there were reasons behind it. He told me that he literally said to me, my physician, this is something that just happens. And I'm sorry that it happened to you. And now today, being a research scientist, that's abandoning basic principles of physics. Nothing just happens. That's not how stuff works. Right. And so, but it's just like, you don't know. You could at least say, I don't know, but it's so definitive. And so anyways, so I start to research, and I'm in the university right now. So I have access to certain things. And so now I'm studying more. I'm really investigating. I'm able to do research because of some of the training that I was already given. But now it's invested into something. Before I was put in these different science classes because I had to, and it didn't connect. There wasn't a visceral connection. Now there's a passion here. I want to know how the cell works, all right, because I have a purpose. And so I start to give my body, and this is a big part of the healing process. If you don't provide your body with the raw materials that it needs to regenerate tissues, it can't do it. And the human body, what's so beautiful about us is we're incredibly resilient. We can do the most to our bodies, so much damage, so much, the consumption of all these crazy things that we eat today that I grew up eating, just inundated. My mother, she would send me across the street to get, it started off with a big gulp, then it was super big gulp, then the double big gulp came out where the cups were too big to just have a dispenser. You had to fold that mess up yourself in the store, do arts and crafts, and then fill the soda up. And so she's taken in that a 20-ounce Coca-Cola, for example, is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of about 16 teaspoons of sugar. All right, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're not even halfway there yet. I can keep going. That's a lot of sugar.
Right.
She's
absolutely.
She's tripling that amount with her, double big gulp, and just wondering what is that doing to our physiology. So we can, and she's still alive today and kicking. All right, she's still here, and our bodies are very resilient at adapting. But if you don't give it the raw materials, it's going to do a patchwork job. And so I found out that okay, what are my discs made of? It's another dominant question. The intravertebral disc in my bone density was very low. What are they made of? All I knew about was calcium from marketing. Just very basic, rudimentary, and it's BS, by the way. It's just a very primitive thinking that's just one thing. There was like 20 other major compounds that help to regenerate and create new tissue, create new bone. Sulfur-bearing amino acids, silica, I can go on and on and on, vitamin D. I wasn't getting any of that stuff on my Ferguson, Missouri drive-through diet that I was on. I was deficient in all those things, and also flooding my cells with very, very low quality materials for my body to build itself. So I basically started to add in some of the compounds that my body needed, and I got better. Man, I got better so fast. So that plus the movement practices, because exercise, we think it's about looking good and being fit. That's a side effect. Exercise is something our genes expect us to do. Our DNA expects us to move because exercise is very close to the word exorcise. They're very, very similar. And it's a big part of elimination and assimilation of nutrients. And so I'll just share this super quick. I'm going to make this study very, very brief, but I came across a study that was done on race horses. And horses, that's like a $1 billion industry, by the way. It's nuts. But if a horse breaks a bone, like you could lose tens of millions of dollars. So they did a study to see if they can increase the bone density of horses. And so they had the control group. They did nothing with the horses. Then they had a study group. They gave them supplements, that are said to improve bone density. And it did. But then there was another group of horses that they gave them the supplements and walked them. And they have an even more significant increase in bone density because of the assimilation. And the third thing really quickly was I wasn't getting well because I was not sleeping well. That was the biggest struggle in my life for those 2 years. Now, the things that I was doing during the day was helping me to sleep better at night. If you're not sleeping, you're not healing. And so my body transformed from it was 6 weeks from the moment I made that decision to get healthy. 6 weeks later, the pain I was terrified about every day of my life was gone. And I didn't get a scan of my spine done for about 9 months because I was still honestly dealing with fear around it because it was so traumatizing.
Sure.
But I completely regenerated the two disc in my, my two ruptured disc. They had retracted on their own. And now I could see the light shining through them because they were so degenerated before. Now the light was shining through them, and I had basically regenerated my spine. That was supposed to be impossible. And the physician was like, he's rubbing his chin. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And that's when I fired my physician and moved on to other things.
Awesome. And amazing at the same time. I mean, again, to the point of resiliency in our bodies and to what we can do ourselves to sustain ourselves, especially in the world that we're in today and that we're living where, it's basically a prescription here, a pill there, 100 caveats of side effects, but that one thing that you need, we got it for you. So again, this is a reason why I'm so glad there's folks like you and specifically yourself going down this journey, taking this path, and you touched upon it. So, I would have thought you would have, with everything you just mentioned, Eat Smarter would have come first, but you ended with you don't heal if you don't sleep well. So that takes us to Sleep Smarter. I want to touch upon that book briefly, and then I really want to dig into Eat Smarter, because I think, again, right now, just in the way of things, it obviously both go hand in hand. It sounds like they both go hand in hand. I know in my personal own experience, I know it goes hand in hand. But let's touch upon Sleep Smarter, and then I want to jump into Eat Smarter. So Sleep Smarter. So like you said, you said, okay, well, I'm doing all the things, everything's great. What said, well, oh, it's sleep that's going to help me heal? Where did that come from? And where did the passion to say, I got to write a book about this and get it out to the community?
This is such a great question. And I want to give a little bit of a preface to this, because something you said earlier was probably the most remarkable thing of this entire conversation, which is about personal responsibility. And right now it's a hot button issue because of the framing, because there tends to be, we tend to see things today, not us necessarily. Most people don't think like this, but what's presented to us are two very polarizing ideas. One is that the oppression in the environment is doing this to you and you're a victim. And the other one, at the other end of the spectrum, is everything is your 100% responsibility. It's your fault if you're not doing anything about it. These are two polar opposite things, seemingly, but the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. Generally, is going to be on a spectrum of those things. So, and I'm a perfect example of that. I'm so grateful for where I come from. To return to that is a nightmare. And this is why I do the work that I do, because I saw the oppression around me. I didn't know what was possible. I didn't have exposure to what health looked like. I didn't see healthy relationships. I didn't see healthy people. It just wasn't a part of my reality. And so having it where it's not a part of my exposure because of very purposeful, and I'll share this really quickly from Eat Smarter. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but just something really quickly. I went and investigated, where does the government subsidies go? Like, how does that affect our health as a community? And there was a really well done study, and this was published by the Journal of the American Medical Association, tracking down the money that's being spent by our government for these big food companies and subsidies. What happens when people are eating those foods that they're paying for, which are primarily cash crops? Corn, used largely for corn syrup and sweeteners, wheat, soy. So these are products that you might go to the grocery store. It looks like a lot of different things, but it's really made of the same stuff. And they tracked down and they found, and most of it is coming through processed foods, the vast majority, processed foods and fast food.
Absolutely.
And so they tracked down and found that it's particularly lower income communities, folks that are consuming the highest amount of government subsidized foods have almost a 40% greater incidence of being obese. All right. And that's just one issue. We're not talking about diabetes. We're not talking about Alzheimer's. We're not talking about heart disease. And our government is literally feeding the problem. And I'm not going to act like this isn't happening, because it's happening. There isn't money that's getting doled out to people who are, growing fruits and vegetables, who are evoking the power to create community gardens and community recreation centers and things of that nature. That money is going elsewhere because it's not important. Now, here's the thing. That's true. It is true that there's an oppression present, but I come from the oppression. I got out. I was able to do it. I was by myself, broken down in my 1-bedroom apartment, mattress on the floor, raggedy couch in Ferguson, Missouri, struggling. First in my family to graduate from college. And it took everything. It took a lot to graduate because I never saw before. But I had to take responsibility. I was trapped in the deepest offshooting or pushing away of my responsibility in those 2 years. Rock bottom. But here's the truth. At some point, this unlocks a superpower when you take 100% responsibility for your life. Not to say that bad things haven't happened or bad things haven't happened to you. You haven't had the opportunity. But every time you point the finger, you're giving your power away. And when you point it back to yourself and take responsibility, you're giving yourself power to change it. So that's what it's really about. That empowerment is taking responsibility, because things are going to happen, but it's about how you respond to that thing. So I just wanted to share that because it's so important, so powerful that you brought that topic up.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. I literally have chills right now because a lot of your circumstances I can relate to, in terms of my upbringing, in terms of not knowing what you don't know, and especially you speaking to government subsidies. I mean, I grew up, I'm from New York originally. I grew up, we had bodegas on the corner. And my mom, who's now a type 2 diabetic as a result, go get the honey buns, go get the chips. This was my food. This wasn't just the snack. This was the food for lunch.
Right.
This was you know what I mean? I didn't go to school with a healthy breakfast. I didn't go to school with breakfast, and I'm not doing a woe is me, but it's just within communities like these that we grew up in, it's you don't know what you don't know. And again, it's trying to find ways of getting that knowledge. And, I hope everyone listening doesn't have to go through what you went through to have to wake up and start taking the knowledge that's out there. Now we have Google, and now we have all of this information. And thankfully we have books like yours, Sleep Smarter, Eat Smarter, that can help open our minds and give us, again, different views that we just haven't seen. I mean, for me, again, as you're saying this story, there were so many things that just pop up in my head in terms of my growth where, yeah, I had the same experiences. And now that I can look back and I can actually say, well, because of the way I ate now, and the way I moved or didn't move back then, and an environment is what caused me to feel a certain way, is what caused me. I had like a bout of depression for like a year and a half or two in my early 20s. And I'm a young man. I'm supposed to be out partying and living the life and just getting after it, right? But similar to you, it's like you have these challenges. You don't know what you don't know. And then one day it's a fortuitous situation that says, Shawn, wake up. David, wake up. Yeah. And it's there in front of you if you can see it. And I think now, especially, again, with folks like yourselves, the internet, social media, if we use these things for the right things, we can gain so much more. And again, this vessel, this physical being and vessel of ours, mind, body, soul, that culminates all of it. It's so important to be able to do the work that you're doing, to be able to just get on with it, whether you're a husband, whether you're a father, whether you're just dating somebody, where you're friends with somebody, where you're a coworker, all of that. Like, it all comes back to the things that you're talking about. And I think, again, it's this interview is about you, so I'm gonna zip it.
This is powerful, absolutely powerful. And what you're doing now, even in that sharing, you're paying it forward. And that's what, when I mentioned to quote, make it out, it's really just rising above the perceived circumstances so that we can now uplift and share this with other people, and that's what it's really all about. So your story matters so much because I can go in there with you visually and I'm like, oh yeah, my honey, I had the 2 for 99 cent honey buns. Like that's a meal. You know what I mean?
Icing. Yeah.
Box of macaroni and cheese is a meal, So these are the circumstances. These are very abnormal. Humans have never subsisted on these types of foods in our evolution. This is it's so strange. And now we're understanding what it does to our genetic expression, these epigenetic controllers. And so a big epigenetic controller is our sleep, to pivot back to it. And the reason I'm a nutritionist, so after I graduate, as a strength and conditioning coach while I was in school, because I just wanted to find a way to serve low-hanging fruit. A lot of the professors at the university were my clients, the faculty, a lot of students.
Wow.
A big portion of my students, funny enough, and I didn't think about this till many years later, were medical students and people in nursing programs, and also people who already graduated and they're already working in the field. They were they were struggling more than anybody, more than the general population, because the culture basically gives them incentive to destroy their own health, to be sleep deprived, to eat poorly,
Yeah.
and to be excessively stressed. And our systems don't even take care of the people who are entrusted with taking care of us, and I addressed that in Eat Smart as well. But so I went from that to opening my clinical practice and working alongside some wonderful physicians over the years as well. But and to be real with you, and I don't share this very often, oftentimes they would send me their toughest cases, because they weren't and oftentimes the reason I was connected to many of these physicians, I was helping them with their health as well, because they weren't trained on what health really is. They're often taught, pharmacology. And when I initially went to college, I went pre-med, but I got out of that, prior to my health going down the hill, and switched over to marketing, which is a whole other story. And then I switched back to health and biology and, nutritional science later on. But I got to see, we're taught pharmacology. It's such a focus on disease. It's not a focus on health.
Right.
That's not what it's about. And so in my clinical practice, I saw I could share so many stories of the incredible things that we saw as far as, type 2 diabetes, folks coming in on metformin and insulin and being able to normalize their blood sugar without medication. We were probably right around 79%, 80% success rate. But there was a time when we couldn't really even talk about that wasn't even a thing. But what I would do is just basically take the patients that were coming in and just teach them how their biology works. I literally had like these diagrams, and I would teach them about how their pancreas works and the beta cells and alpha cells, and walk them through, but in a way that was colorful, that made sense. And so they felt like, it didn't just happen to me. Like, that's how the process works. This is how blood sugar works. Nobody took the time to teach them about what was happening in their body. So we saw all these incredible things happen, all these incredible transformations, but there was always a percentage of people who didn't get the results with food and lifestyle changes around movement, things like that. And eventually I got face to face. It took about 5 years for me to stop and be like, what is going on here? Because we have a tendency to think people are lying. They're not trying hard enough. That's one of the fatal flaws of this industry as well. And the reality is, oftentimes people that are struggling to get the results others are getting, they're oftentimes are trying harder than other folks in different domains, but they get into a state of learned helplessness. But I finally started asking people about their sleep, and I could not believe what people were telling me, because my sleep was good now. So you don't think about it. That's when you know something's going well, is you don't think about it. It's just like on automatic. Yep. And so they're telling me these stories, like they're waking up, they're sleeping 4 hours a night, or they're waking up every 2 hours, or whatever the case might be. And I know in my experience at that time and playing at a high level and seeing results, I picked up a few things. One thing is, people want change, but they generally don't want to change that much. Okay. They want change, but they don't want to change that much, because we're comfortable with who we are and how we do things. And that's just the reality of the situation. We can talk about the psychology of why that is if we have time. But anyway, so what I did was I was looking for some clinically proven methods for folks that they can implement without having to turn their life upside down to improve their sleep quality. All right. And so in Sleep Smarter, there's 21 clinically proven strategies, all backed by science. And some of those were some of the original things that I implemented with these patients many, many years ago, before sleep was a popular conversation. And so when people implemented these things, finally the weight came off, their blood sugar normalized. For other folks, their blood pressure normalized. For other folks, their anxiety improved, their depression, whatever the case might be. It is incredible what we started to see. It's just like things went to an entirely new level. And I was just like, I gotta tell people about this, like, because I was still working in a one-on-one context, where I was like, invited to some speaking events, things like that. But I just started my podcast as well. So I did some classes on this. It was a 3-part series. Only time in the history of my show, 500 episodes, only time I did a 3-part series, and it was on sleep. And it just, although maybe we had done 50 shows at that point, but it was the top most downloaded episodes. And I was like, this is something. So, that ended up turning into a book. Yeah. And that ended up turning into, I self-published it first, and it got picked up by a major publisher. Actually, it was 11 publishers vying for the book, trying to, get me on their squad, which is crazy. Again, coming from where I come from, to these publishers battling it out, to get the rights, but, so that became an international bestseller. It's translated in like 20 different languages now. And and I want to share this with everybody here. I really, really want everybody to get this. That's the power of an idea. I'm the least likely for this stuff to happen where I come from, for people in Japan to be going to the library and seeing my book there. That's the power of an idea. Right. And this is how powerful we are. This is how powerful we are. Because what happened was it changed the culture. It literally changed the culture. Sleep wellness books, publishers, agents, they were trying to talk me out of it because it had never done well before. There was never a book on, and they got the top guys. And some of these guys are my friends. They put books out on sleep wellness and it never took off, not even remotely close. And we sold hundreds of thousands of copies. And it's number one, is the power of an idea. And number two, it's the power of being who you are, being yourself. Because also, I'm not like those guys. I'm showing up and making science cool because I'm a cool person. I'm a real person. I'm not here to play games and pretend like I'm something that I'm not. And so people are going to identify with that for the most part. The majority of people are. But of course, there's going to be detractors, going to be people who don't feel that. They want you to, be buttoned up to the top button, and disseminating the information a certain way. I'm not for those people. I'm for the people.
Sure.
And so bringing my articulation and my experience, because I work with real people in real world situations, and I help them to get well. I help them to get themselves well. That's the key. And so taking that and putting it in a way that makes sense, because sleep, that's not a sexy topic for most people. It's just not. It's a weird thing. It's like, can seem boring,
Right.
But making that sexy, making it attractive, making it fun, making it so that it's palatable and people can digest it, making it so that it's actionable. Like I can do that. That makes sense. And that's a big reason why that took off. And then since then, many books have come after, that have been successful in the sleep domain. But me coming from where I come from, I opened the door for that based on an idea and taking action on that.
Yeah, amazing, powerful. And I'm glad it's out there. And I'm glad it's been doing and continues to do what it's doing. And I hope now with Eat Smarter, it's much of the same, because again, it's essentially a 1-2 punch. There are a few jabs in there, like movement and getting that sunshine, that natural vitamin D, and a few other things. But yeah, sleep, and now here comes the hook with Eat Smarter. Tell me a little bit. Are there a few things you could just touch upon that you go through? Maybe some just quick tidbits, quick bites, no pun intended, of things that you can offer.
Absolutely. So it's always going to boil down to empowerment and connection. Having that connective tissue. We are inundated with data. Like you got the internet at your fingertips. Yeah. You can find out the answer to anything, but it doesn't really translate necessarily to real knowledge and action, right? We've got all this data, but how can you get folks to actually put it into play and to utilize it? So what Eat Smarter is doing, and just a little note about it, when the book came out, it was the #1 new release of all books in the United States, fiction and nonfiction. But that was just for a short period because the books ended up selling out, which is not good. All right. It's not like a concert venue that's capacity.
Good, but not good.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, all the pipeline issues, in this age of, pandemic circumstances, it's just a pipeline issues with distribution, that kind of stuff. But to see it take off like that was an affirmation for me, because I know, again, people want to be healthy. I've never met one person that wants to be unhealthy. Maybe they've talked themselves, again, learned helplessness. Maybe they believe that it's too hard. It's not for them. They're not enough, whatever the case might be. But I've never met one person who doesn't want to be healthy. Right. And so striking that chord, what I'm doing with Eat Smarter is, for the first time in book form, let me be clear about this. In popular mainstream distribution book form, taking people behind the scenes and actually teaching them how their metabolism works, right? So how does fat loss work? How does weight loss work? All right, we know about the whole that you cut your calories, this and that, but how does fat loss work? Where does fat go? Where does it go when you, quote, lose it? Like, how does the whole, and so I'm demystifying the process and creating a level of empowerment. Now you understand it's not just this superficial thing, this ghost in the machine you're fighting against. And so we do that, but then also, what are some clinically proven foods, nutrients that aid in these different processes that have a lot to do with our hormone function, neurotransmitters, all those things. But what are the foods that are clinically proven to help to fortify and support those metabolic processes, right? And if we have time, we could hit a couple of those. But so that's number one. But food, this is also the problem, is that food keeps being designated to being, in our culture, when people think about diet nutrition, they think about weight for the most part. That's what it's culturally tied to. And that is one of the biggest mistakes, because food is so much more than that. Food is literally what you are made of. Every single cell of your body is made from the food that you eat. Every cell. And so your heart, I know some of the top cardiologists, the top immunologists, your immune cells that are so important today, especially it's kind of on top of mind for everybody. Your immune cells are made from food. So are your immune cells made from sustainable, real whole foods, or are they made from Funyuns? You know, because you get to pick. And chances are the Funyun immune cells are not going to hold up very well against a viral infection or bacterial infection, whatever the case might be. Right. You're making your cells out of these foods, and you get to choose. Your heart, same thing. But again, our top cardiologists, you know, again, I could name drop some of my colleagues. When they go into their traditional education, they're taught maybe a couple of weeks total about nutrition. It's very superficial stuff. All right, basically more along the lines of like, if somebody has a rare B12 deficiency, prescribe this, or just, you know, recommend people watch their fat, right? Eat plenty of whole grains. Very superficial stuff. They're not educated on it. And you can see this out picturing with their own health, for example, that it's not working. And so taking that, so that's the other part is, let's round this out. Let's show people firsthand how nutrition and food controls and affects their metabolism, but also the other areas of their life. How does food affect your memory and your cognitive ability, your ability to stay focused in a very distracted world? How does food affect your emotional stability, your emotional intelligence, and your ability to connect with other people? And one of the most important parts of the book, and I'm so grateful to be able to talk to you about this right now, what took the most energy for me to write, because I wrote this book with this purpose, to shed light on our conditions for the majority of our citizens, the environment that we're living in, and how food is affecting our disposition towards violence. And all the clinical evidence, it's mind-blowing. When you see this stuff stacked out in the book and the different studies, like you can literally see firsthand in ward studies how nutrient deficiencies increase your proclivity towards violent offenses, right? And all the debate that's going on, and so things are so volatile. We are not well. It's very difficult. It's not impossible. Let me be clear. It's just harder to have patience and to be compassionate, to perspective take when we are physiologically unhealthy. When our biological needs are not met and we're disrupted and we're sick, it's just harder to do those things. It's not that we can't. It just makes it harder. So shedding light on that, and also a big part of the book too is like in Eat Smart, I really drill in on all the clinically proven evidence on how certain foods control and influence your sleep quality as well, because there's certain good sleep nutrients, because sleep doesn't just happen. It's all built on these certain hormones and neurotransmitters that are built from food. And so all of that is packed into that powerful book. And, you know, I'm so grateful. It took a lot of time, a lot of years to create it all, but very, very proud of it.
I'm sure. Digging in as we speak. So once I complete the book, we need to do a follow-up, because there is a lot there. There's a lot, and you just even highlighted it just doing this overview right now. Thank you for that. But so many things that are connected. I mean, you know, it almost sounds like, I mean, I don't want to say 100%, but damn near. It sounds like 90-ish, and then throw in some movement, and you know that there it is, you know, that's affecting every dynamic, like you said, from mood. And I know it firsthand, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I kind of touched upon, it affects your mood. It affects how you move through life day to day. It affects, how you're going out in the world, how you're carrying this body of yours out into the world, and how you're engaging with the world. So, it's important. And just as Sleep Smarter was powerful, Eat Smarter right now, I'm getting smarter and more powerful with every page that I'm reading. So like I said, I'm honest here that I'm not completely done with the book yet as we record this, but when I do finish it and complete it, and I have some more level of understanding, I don't know if I'll ever get to a Shawn model Stevenson level of understanding, but as I get to it, I want to have the follow-up because I do want to dig into this deeper. And I think from our community specifically, these are just, it's getting better, but I think it's just so foreign still. I think just even the notion, like you said, you know, and side note, you do make sleep and eating and science sexy or fun or however you're approaching it, because like you said, you speak from the heart. And I think that's the realest way to come anyway. If you're speaking from the heart and you have this knowledge and you can convey it to those who are willing to listen, game changer. And I think that's why you've been changing the game so far. And it's fascinating. It's also entertaining going for the ride with all of this knowledge from your humorous perspective at times on approaching these things. So I think it's a beautiful combination. I'm loving all of it. I just want to ask before we get to the point of wrapping, and I don't want to wrap, so we will have to, I'm going to commit you to do a follow-up with me. I do want to ask, just awesome. I appreciate that, Shawn. Just on your personal routines, if you want to share one, if you want to share all, no wrong answers, just like at the top of this with masculinity. But are there any go-to routines that you do on a daily basis? You mentioned one, waking up and asking, how can you be of service, which I think is beautiful, and I want to adapt that into my own. But are there any others, whether it's movement, whether it's from a spiritual perspective, body perspective, where you're like, these are the things Shawn Stevenson does every morning or daily that just gets me right, gets me primed for the day, mindset, overall well-being, etc.?
Oh, yeah. So this is a fantastic question. And for me, it's really low-hanging fruit. So since we're giving like a little bit of insight, I would want things that are easy on-ramp for people, the easy on-ramp things that I do for myself that have just become automated, that are very simple, but also very powerful. Because as I mentioned, you know, the most powerful part of the book for me personally in writing was to shed light on the conditions that many of us are existing in, where we're inundated with poor food, where we're lacking access. And there are many forces that are actually deterrents for health and creating sickness in many ways, but also providing solutions. Like, here are 5 things that we can actually do to change these conditions for ourselves personally, taking personal responsibility, and also how we can change our community. But it really always still boils down to what are the simple principles that we could adhere to. And I'll just share with you today what I did, because I do this every day, but I'm going to share a little insight that I just started doing, actually adding this in very recently to take this to another level. And it's another simple tweak, though.
Okay.
So the most foundational aspect of human health from a nutritional standpoint, unfortunately, it's very often overlooked. And it's something so simple. We're taught in my university classes even this dogma about these 3 macronutrients. We have 3 macronutrients: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. And that's the end of the story. But it's not the end of the story. There are 2 other major macronutrients. One of them is alcohol. A lot of folks know about that one. And I also talk about that in depth, like how does that work? How does that influence fat loss in the book? But all the other macronutrient, which is the most powerful, is water. And oftentimes it's overlooked because it's considered to be a non-caloric or non-energy contributing macronutrient. But that's looking at nutrition through the lens of caloric tunnel vision, not understanding that water makes everything work better. The majority of your body is water. People just like, we really got to get this. It's so simple. And a recent study, this was published in the journal Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise, found that just a 2% drop in your baseline hydration rate can lead to significant cognitive impairment, right? So reduction in executive function, so the prefrontal cortex. Also the volume of your brain can shrink substantially when you're dehydrated. Literally, like you lose that the size of your brain, and it's not a joke. But also, you can rehydrate your brain relatively quickly because the blood-brain barrier allows water in droves into the brain. But it has to be the right type of water, which is a whole other conversation. So the first thing that I do to start my day, and I want if people can maybe pull this into their life, this is a powerful, very simple health principle. The first thing I do, you might go to the bathroom, whatever, but I take what I call an inner bath. And during the night, your body is doing trillions upon trillions of metabolic processes. And there's a lot of metabolic waste. And so this is why urine tends to be more concentrated in the morning as well, is the waste products. You've got to help to literally, quote, flush out, give your body the water medium to do and run these processes to clear out metabolic waste. We take an outer shower, but the inside is far more important because beauty is even from the inside out. And so I take an inner bath, and what that looks like is somewhere around 20 to sometimes 30 ounces of water, but somewhere generally around 20 to maybe 25 ounces of water to start the day. My wife, she does maybe 12 ounces with lemon. She's found that she's not vibing getting up and drinking, room temperature or cold water. She's drinking hot water with lemon. All right. And that's her vibe. That's what she does. But she does take her version of her inner bath. And so the other part of this is something called water-induced thermogenesis. All right. Water-induced thermogenesis. So one of the studies that I outlined in Eat Smarter, they had test subjects to just drink 17 ounces of water within a couple of minutes. And they found that by drinking 17 ounces of water in the study, increased their metabolic rate by 10, 20, upwards of even 30%. So that means they actually ended up burning 30 calories from drinking 17 ounces of water. And this is something, if we do this a few times a day, it's a calorie-free energetic input that makes your body burn calories. And it's not because of heating the water up or anything strange like that. It's because it makes everything work better. All right. All your hormones and neurotransmitters that responsible for losing weight, quote, burning fat, it's all happening in a water medium. So you get that benefit as well. Last thing, the thing that I've added in recently is the inclusion of electrolytes. I've been adding different versions of really high quality salts over the years, but now specifically getting the sodium, potassium, magnesium going the first part of the day. Oftentimes with my morning water I've been doing, and I'll share this really, really quickly. Researchers at McGill University found that they detailed sodium as being a, quote, on-off switch for specific neurotransmitters in the body that improve cognitive function and also protect your brain from degenerative diseases. And so sodium is another thing that's very controversial, but this is because most sodium primarily comes from processed foods in our culture, like 70, 80% of the sodium we're taking in. So electrolytes, our body's running on electrical currency, and so these electrolytes help with signal transduction so your cells can talk to each other better. But it has to come from a good source. We get into all that stuff as well. But these are foundational principles for what the human body is made of. Water, minerals, electrolytes are specific minerals. The right types of fats to help fortify the health of your brain. Proteins to make up your hormones and neurotransmitters are literally made from protein, your tissues. And the list goes on and on. We detail all of these different factors for sure in the book.
Amazing. I can keep going. I'm fascinated by this, and I hope everybody listening is taking this in. If you come away with nothing, come away with this. These things are so easy when you're aware. And again, this conversation, I'm hoping, has made those listening aware, and those who hopefully have become aware can share this with people they care about to make them aware also, because again, you're mentioning these simple things when it's really broken down, as you put it, it's very simple, but it's so powerful, it's so effective, and it's just these little adjustments. Water and some salt. Well, not just any salt. What in terms of salt, let me ask this quickly. What kind of sea salt would you suggest? Himalayan sea salt? What would you suggest if someone were to add salt to their water?
So
would you
salt,
suggest that?
Yeah, salt is a very, again, it's one of those words that comes with a lot of nuance, very much we started with masculinity, it can mean a lot of different things.
Right.
In our culture, when we think of salt, we think of sodium chloride, right? So that's sodium salt. And so that's actually 40% sodium and 60% chloride. But there's also there's magnesium salts, there's potassium salt, like magnesium sulfate, or Epsom salts for bath. That's magnesium salt. There's
Right.
many different types of salt. So it comes in many forms. And throughout human evolution, and really even, animals as well. Have you ever seen those goats that like climb up on the side of like a dam or like a mountain, and they're like sideways, they're literally risking their life. What they're trying to get access to is salt and minerals, right? Because there's something in their biology just knows like this is important for the development of, fill in the blank. So
Sure.
in nature, all of us, like, we're really vying for and looking for adequate sources of sodium because it's needed to run so many processes. So I want to use that caveat. And then here, so where are we getting these compounds? Well, you're actually going to get a significant amount of electrolytes, including sodium, from real whole foods. Like, certain vegetables and fruits are abundant in bioavailable sodium. But there are more concentrated versions of that in salts, which there are salts that come from salt mines. There are kind of more water-derived aspects, where water was interacting with and creating, like, even if we think about ocean water, for example, right? It's very salty water.
Right.
So it's just like understanding there's certain things that happen, with the ecology of the planet that give off these certain salts. So for us to just say automatically that this is bad for us and not acknowledge what our ancestors have been doing for thousands upon thousands of years is very ignorant. But the data, and I'll actually go and I share the meta-analysis. So not just like my opinion or a short-sighted thing, but what does the majority of data show? And the majority of data shows that the whole high sodium and salt being the causative factor behind hypertension, blood pressure, heart disease, it's just not accurate. It's just not accurate. And you can look at the numbers and see it yourself. Just because we lower our sodium, but let me be clear, salt can influence your blood pressure. It can push your blood pressure up as well. But one of the studies that I shared in Eat Smarter detailed how having sodium too low can also significantly elevate blood pressure as a rebound response because your body's increase in stress hormones, insulin resistance can take place as well if you're too low in sodium. Thyroid function can become abnormal. The list goes on and on and on. We have to keep this in a proper perspective. So from real food, you're going to get sodium, salt. So this is going to be higher quality salts, not the girl with the umbrella, that Morton salt.
Right.
That's not high quality salt.
Yeah.
That's not good salt. And there's a lot of, binders and fillers and, chemical processing, to make it certain consistency and certain level of, quote, purity and prettiness to it. But salt has character, so this could be, there's Celtic salt, there's Himalayan rock salt. Yes, there's real, quote, real salt here. That's mines in Utah and things like that. There's black Hawaiian salt. Every culture, and working at a university, I got to meet and work with people from all over the world. They've got certain things in their bag that everybody just does, historically based on because I was inquiring about their ancestors. Like what is your grandmother doing? Your great grandmother doing?
Yeah.
So salt is another one of those things. Very diverse. Then we have electrolyte products that are derived from these different salts as well that are very, concentrated versions, might have certain combinations of formulas, but you got to be careful because marketers screw this stuff up. It went from like Gatorade being something for these athletes, which was tremendously high in sodium, the original formula, if you ever get a chance to check out the original formula, and the amount of sugar was minuscule compared to what it came to be.
Yeah.
It got flipped.
Right.
Where the sodium went down, the salts went down, and the sugar just skyrocketed. And so we got to be careful about the sugar, the additives, the binders, fillers, chemical, abnormal processing, pesticides, herbicides, all this stuff that can turn something that's supposed to be healthy into something detrimental.
Well, I guess all roads lead to get that book, Eat Smarter. I am with it. Like I said, I am reading as we speak, and I can't wait to do a follow-up around it. I am, again, always in awe, always appreciative of what you bring and when you bring facts behind the commentary. So you always figure out how to sneak that in. So I'm always appreciative of you in that, in your work, on the gram, on your .com. So I'll wrap it here to respect and be respectful of your time and there it is. We'll do it. We'll do a part 2. Tune in soon.
For
So
sure.
there's the open loop.
For sure.
There's
Can't
the
wait.
open loop for the audience. But is there anything else before we wrap that you want to share with the audience that you may have coming up? Is it, eat smarter all day? Is there anything else that we should be aware of?
Yeah, this community is so important, and it's really up to us to be empowered, and we can't wait around any longer for someone outside of ourselves to come and fix our issues in our communities. It's really up to us. Nobody cares like we do. And so, but it really starts with, for me, the number one thing is being the example, be the model, let your life be the example and the template for others to follow. And then we can just keep taking it bigger steps and bigger steps from there. Because once you start feeling good, I mean, you just tap into an exceeding levels of power and empowerment to change the lives of others, to be of service. So that's right. I'm just really grateful to be here with you. And, I just really want to reiterate how important this community is. And as far as Eat Smarter, you can pick it up anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target stores. We got a national campaign with Target stores. It's very rare that a big idea food book gets the placement that we did. We had it's like a console, outside of the aisle feature when the book first came out for a few months, and the book just really took off. Okay. And it was at every Target store across the country. And listen, I worked at Target when I was, when I was in high school, my senior year, when I was, trying to graduate with my class because I got kicked out the year before. I was working my behind off at Target, just to help out around the house and just, trying to, do the thing, man, and so to have my book there today is really, again, just speaks to the power of an idea. But so it's also, it did so well that we've got 2 more Target campaigns. One of them's going right now, so you can pick it up at Target stores. And I just want to share too, with Target, a lot of folks, this is getting access to people who usually don't even see books like this or content like this and exposure like this. So we need to let Target know. And the funny thing is, I'm like, Target, why would they choose my book for this campaign? Because I'm kind of exposing some of the stuff that they're, promoting to the people. But it was some higher up at Target. They was like, hey, this book is fantastic. And so, but giving exposure, and we've got to let these companies know this is the kind of information that we want, and to demand more of it. And we do that by voting, with our dollar and with our actions. So, and of course, the Model Health Show is my podcast, as you mentioned at the beginning, which is crazy to be able to say this. It's been the #1 health podcast many, many times the past few years that we've been doing the show. And really, we do master classes, as you know, on every health subject that you can imagine, so people walk away. All you got to do is click play, take this adventure with me, and by the end of it, you're going to be empowered in whatever health aspect that is. I do master classes with myself, and I bring on the very best people in their respective fields in the world for the audience over there. So you can check out the Model Health podcast as well.
Yeah, and I can vouch for all of that because I am an avid listener. Shawn, again, I appreciate you. I thank you so much. Black Love fam, new fam that has joined, make sure follow this man on Instagram to get the latest and greatest at Shawn Model. Like you said, pick up Eat Smarter. Go check out Sleep Smarter, because if you're not part of this international movement, well, time to wake up before you go back to sleep on it. And make sure you go listen to his podcast, Model Health Show, modelhealthshow.com. And share, like I said at the top of this, and this is beyond selfless promotion. I think there were so many nuggets here for the community that's so important. Share it with someone you love. Share it with another king. Share it with your queen. Share it with all the fam, the friends, because especially right now more than ever, health is truly wealth. It is truly that biggest currency for us right now. So treat it as such. Go out there, support Shawn. Shawn, I thank you again. And until we do this thing next time, thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Black Love fam. Thank you, new fam. And I will wrap it up. Peace, love, and soul. Thanks again.